You've probably often heard people say think and grow rich, but you've thought both long and fast, and yet nothing seems to stick.
We romanticize the 5 a.m. wake-ups, we watch study routine videos on repeat, and here's the real question. He talks about this one radical truth. It's plain and simple, you're not living to satisfy other people's expectations. Plain and simple.
It's not always about motivation, right? It's about showing up, and you'll be surprised by how often consistency in miles is created by movement in inches. After all, small wins compound into big victories, right? That's the kind of courage that we need to build. The courage to be disliked and, still be happy with it.
Consumption is just the root of inspiration, right? And creation is what transforms you into the best version of yourself. Hi, welcome back to Satyabama Podcast. I'm Ananya Iqal.
And I'm Meher Fathima.
Like most people, you probably started the year off with ambitious plans to make great changes. Believe me, you're not alone. It's February 2026 already, and the promises the January era once held of you getting a new haircut, a revamped stationery kit, those beautiful color-coded planners, Gen Z people get these days, and even fluency in Japanese by the end of December silently haunt the back of your mind. And needless to say, the academic comeback we've all so hardly, manifested hasn't even materialized yet.
You've probably often heard people say think and grow rich, but you've thought both long and fast, and yet nothing seems to stick. So what now? Well, here's 5 books, 5 ideas, and it only takes 5 minutes to start.
We always seem to rely on that invisible motivation that silently hangs in the air, right? We romanticize the 5 a.m. wake-ups, we watch study routine videos on repeat, and here's the real question. When do we actually get the work done?
If that's a question that you've been wondering about as well, then maybe you should try reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. Because after all, it's not always about motivation, right? It's about showing up. And you'll be surprised by how often consistency in miles is created by movement in inches. After all, small wins compound into big victories, right?
Exactly. And I think all of that in one single book is just godsend.
Exactly.
Now, here's another question that people often tend to ponder about. We're often asked, hey, what are you doing in life? What's the plan? What's next? I feel like the hustle gets so loud in your head that we often forget what truly makes us feel alive, right?
And speaking of that, I think Ikigai is a book that talks about just that, right? It's about finding the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what sustains you, and what the world truly needs. It's about living a life that is truly meaningful to you and on your own terms.
Exactly. Speaking on being on your own terms, right? What if the real reason you're stuck is not just laziness, but your fear of what other people think about you? And in this book, The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, and inspired by Alfred Adler's philosophy, which I'm a total fan, he talks about this one radical truth. It's plain and simple. You're not living to satisfy other people's expectations. Plain and simple.
And happiness, according to Adlerian philosophy, begins when you separate the thoughts and opinions of other people from that of your own. It reminds you that you can choose the next step and that your past doesn't define you, your trauma doesn't imprison you, and that you really are the master of your own destiny.
Exactly. And I think that this book boils down to this one truth, right? Not everyone will like you. And that's all right. Because the goal here is not to be liked. The goal here is to be real about it.
And Ananya, I think that sometimes living a life that feels true and meaningful to you on the inside, even when the outside isn't always reflective of that, that's the kind of courage that we need to build. The courage to be disliked and, still be happy with it.
Exactly. Speaking of happiness, it's hard to be happy all the time, right? Because we're always so focused on being perfect, flawless all the time. It's almost as if we're under the spotlight, right? And it's very uncomfortable. But here's the real question, right? What if we stop trying to be flawless all the time and started being real? In this book, The Gift of Imperfections by Brené Brown, we're invited to let go of who we're supposed to be and embrace who we actually are.
And I think it all boils down to the fact that perfectionism is just fear wearing a pretty mask, right? Fear of being judged, fear of being imperfect, and fear of, just not being good enough. In this book, Brown reminds us that worthiness is not something that you earn, but rather it's something that you believe in. And owning your story,
imperfections and all,
that's the bravest thing that you can do.
Exactly. And sometimes empowerment means, right, you're unlearning the rules that you're applauded for playing. In this book by Glennon Doyle, which I'm a big fan of, Untamed, she talks about how women are never meant to shrink themselves, especially just for approval.
I think it's important to remind ourselves that you were not born to be tamed, you were not born to be manageable, right? You were born to be alive. And I think it's a book that really emphasizes on breaking generational conditioning and trusting your inner voice after all. Because choosing authenticity over acceptance, that's the kind of thing that we should strive for.
Exactly. It's not just rebellion for the sake of it. It's about returning to your true self, and I think that's most important, right?
And now, to kickstart your daily dose of positivity, I think it's important that we remind ourselves to start off with a habit that can be as simple as giving yourself a high five in the morning. I know it sounds awkward and silly even, but when was the last time that we truly applauded ourselves? Applauded ourselves simply for showing up? Well, if that's something you've been wondering about, then The Hi-Fi Habit by Mel Robbins is a book that talks about just that.
Exactly. It's sitting there right in my desk right now. And, it's right. We often tend to cheer other people, right? We spend so much time cheering for other people that we forget to do so for ourselves. And sometimes all it takes is just one high five in the mirror, and you can change how you view yourself.
Exactly, and that can be so empowering. But I would like to remind our listeners that while this is just the bread and butter of self help books, there's a whole buffet out there. So it's important that you go out, explore, and build the best version of yourself.
Exactly. The more you read, the more you manifest. And sometimes you consume more but forget to create. And when I say this, I think I speak for everybody, right, Meher? Consumption is just the root of inspiration, right? And creation is what transforms you into the best version of yourself. And I think knowledge without movement is just procrastination in disguise. Thank you for tuning in at Satyabama Podcast. I'm Ananya Iqbal.
And I'm Meher Fathima,
Signing off.